Of all the First World War sites in Ypres, this one is definitely the most iconic. It's the Menin Gate. In fact, it's probably the most iconic site on the entire Western Front. It stood here since 1927, and it's half a mausoleum, half a victory arch. This is at the eastern edge of the town. The battlefields are that way. The front line was that way. So this is the main route that troops would take when they headed out into the battlefields. So for many of the troops, this was the last part of Ypres that they saw. So it was a really fitting place after the war to build a monument remembering the missing soldiers. More than 54,000 names of missing Commonwealth and British soldiers are recorded on this monument. Whenever I visit the Western Front and try to make sense of everything that went on here, the bit that's the most difficult to get your head around is just the sheer scale. The scale of the numbers of people involved, the scale of the destruction, the scale of the dead and missing, and it's places like this that really bring that home to you, because these are men missing from the fighting in the Ypres salient who have no known grave. British and Commonwealth men, South Africans, Australians, Canadians, all recorded here. It's not until you stand here and scan these thousands of names and think about the grieving communities that it all starts to make some sort of sense. We're really in the Australian corner now of the Menin Gate, and all of these names around me are of Australian soldiers, and there's interesting stories everywhere you look. If you see just here, we see two names, G and T Seabrook. These are the Seabrook brothers from Sydney, and they actually served with their younger brother as well. He was an officer, they were simply privates. These two men, George and Theo Seabrook, served in the Battle of the Menin Road, and they were both killed by the same shell. Their brother had not heard that his two brothers had been killed when he was wounded himself, and he died the next day. So the three Seabrook brothers were killed on the 21st of October 1917. You can't help but stand here and just think what this means, especially when we see the Australian units and think about these grieving families back home. They never got to visit these memorials, the cemeteries where their loved ones lie. In the 1920s at this time, when there were so many grieving families, there was a famous painting of this memorial showing ghostly soldiers in front of it, and they would sell these to grieving families, and the families would hang them in their house to think of their loved one whose name was recorded here. And they had a wonderful sentiment attached to them. On these paintings was inscribed the message, "He's not missing, he's here." And I think that's a beautiful sentiment. These men are here, they're still here, their memories are here. And it's wonderful that today we can visit them and fulfill that pilgrimage that the families never got to.